area here. Yeah. In Vietnam, we believe about what's go around, what's come around. When you free the fish, you get you are free the fish here. It's meaning you take it lucky for yourself as well.
Our first stop in Hanoi started with something we weren't expecting. People were selling live fish outside a pagoda, but you weren't buying them to take home. You were buying them to set them free. Our guide Eden explained that releasing a live creature is an act of compassion, and in Buddhist tradition, a way of making merit. Basically, you buy the fish its freedom. Not a bad way to start the morning. I'm Gerald, and this is Us 4 Somewhere. We're traveling from Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh City in 19 days, and this is day 6. Today, we're exploring some of Hanoi's history, starting at its oldest pagoda.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see here, this one the entrance of the pagoda.
This is Trấn Quốc Pagoda, considered the oldest Buddhist pagoda in Hanoi. Its history goes back nearly 1,500 years to the 6th century, although this isn't where it originally stood. The pagoda was first built beside the Red River and was later relocated as the riverbank eroded. Today, it sits on a small island along Hanoi's West Lake. Eden also explained something we'd probably been getting wrong since arriving in Vietnam. A pagoda and temple aren't necessarily the same thing. Here, a pagoda is primarily a place of Buddhist worship, while temples can be dedicated to deities, historical figures, or other traditions. As we walked around, Eden pointed out the stupas, Buddhist images, and some of the stories behind what we were seeing. And then we stopped at a tree. Not particularly unusual, until you know where it came from.
We have a big one tree. This one, we in Vietnam we call Bodhi, or in the English name they call Buddha tree. So yeah, the past have a story about Buddha stayed to practice the Buddhism under the tree here about 49 days without eating, without do anything as well. After 49 days, he get enlightened.
This is a Bodhi tree. Buddhist tradition says Siddhartha Gautama attained enlightenment while meditating beneath a Bodhi tree in India more than 2,500 years ago. And in 1959, a sapling from the sacred Bodhi tree at Bodh Gaya was brought here as a gift from India. Indian President Rajendra Prasad and Ho Chi Minh planted it together at Quoc. Inside were Buddhist altars, statues, and offerings of fruit. Eden talked us through some of the different traditions and images we were seeing. Vietnamese Buddhism has historically been strongly influenced by the Mahayana tradition, which spread throughout much of East Asia.
When we coming here, you can see that. You can see this one. At the middle here, we can add a mention for about the Mother Goddess as well. Yeah. So we have a yeah. This Lady Buddha statue on top is our culture. Oh, they're goldfish.
Our next stop took us from almost 1,500 years of religious history to a man whose story shaped modern Vietnam. This is the Ho Chi Minh Mausoleum. Ho Chi Minh's embalmed body is preserved inside, but cameras aren't allowed in the mausoleum. So for this part, ours stayed outside. But before we continue, there's something we need to know. Who exactly was Ho Chi Minh? Ho Chi Minh was born in 1890 when Vietnam was part of French Indochina. As a young man, he left Vietnam and spent decades abroad, working, traveling, and becoming involved in movements against colonial rule. He eventually emerged as the leader of the Viet Minh, a movement fighting for Vietnamese independence. Then, on September 2nd, 1945, standing here in Hanoi's Ba Dinh Square, Ho Chi Minh declared the independence of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam. But independence didn't bring peace. Vietnam would fight a war against France, become divided into North and South, and then endure another long and devastating war. Ho Chi Minh died in 1969. He never lived to see Vietnam reunified in 1975. But his image and legacy remain everywhere in the country. And to many Vietnamese, he is still affectionately known as Uncle Ho. Which explains why this place isn't simply another historical monument. For many Vietnamese visitors, it's deeply personal. This is the Presidential Palace. It was built in the early 1900s during French colonial rule as the residence of the Governor-General of French Indochina. It's grand, European, and very, very yellow. But when Ho Chi Minh became president, he chose not to live in it. He used the palace for official business and receiving guests, but lived much more simply elsewhere in the grounds. While only a short walk away was a much simpler place its new leader chose to call home. Ho Chi Minh eventually moved into a modest wooden stilt house here in 1958. Inspired by traditional houses he'd encountered in northern Vietnam, it was deliberately simple, and he lived and worked here until his death in 1969. The whole atmosphere changes back here. The enormous mausoleum and presidential palace disappear behind you, and suddenly it's trees, paths, water, and a small wooden house. It was probably the contrast that stayed with us most. The monumental version of Ho Chi Minh outside, and the much simpler version represented by the place where he actually lived. And even on the way out, the tributes continued. And then, lunch. Lunch was included with our tour, which we've learned can mean many things. Usually it means, here's your food, it's fine, please be back at the bus in 45 minutes. So we weren't expecting much. Then the food started arriving. At some point, we started wondering whether Eden had accidentally told them there were 14 of us. So that was the first half of day 6 in Hanoi. But we're not done with day 6. Join us next week when we explore the cultures of Vietnam's many ethnic groups, discover a tomb decorated with some very unexpected carvings, and when somebody decides that climbing a 19-meter traditional house is a good idea. We'll see you next week